The night was suffocatingly dark, the kind where the shadows seemed to reach out and swallow everything whole. The wind howled, rattling the windows of Sarah's isolated home at the edge of a forgotten village. Rain pounded like a relentless drumbeat, echoing through the empty rooms. But inside, all was quiet, too quiet. Sarah sat alone, her fingers clutching a cup of cold tea. Her parents' warning echoed in her mind, never open the door to strangers at night. She had always obeyed that rule, but tonight, a heavy dread hung in the air. The power had gone out hours ago, plunging the house into total darkness. The only light came from the occasional flash of lightning, briefly illuminating the sinister corners of the room. Suddenly, a sharp knock broke the silence, sending Sarah's heart into her throat. Her blood ran cold as the sound reverberated through the house. Who would be out in this storm? The knock came again, more insistent, like something desperate clawing at the door. Sarah stood, her knees trembling, and approached the door. Her hand hovered over the handle, her breath quickening with every second. Her parents' warning screamed in her mind, but curiosity and fear drove her forward. She turned the handle slowly, the creak of the door seeming to echo in the empty space. As the door inched open, a foul stench hit her like a wall, a sickening mix of rot and decay. Her stomach churned, and she gagged, stepping back instinctively. Standing in the doorway was a man, or what was left of one. His skin hung in ragged strips, dripping with blood that pooled at his feet. His eyes were hollow pits, void of life, yet they locked onto Sarah with a predatory hunger. Before she could react, the man lunged, his gnarled hands grabbing her with bone-crushing force. Sarah screamed, a high, piercing sound that echoed through the night. The man's mouth twisted into a grotesque grin as he dragged her outside, her feet scraping against the floor, leaving a trail of blood in their wake. The storm seemed to intensify as they burst into the night, the wind howling louder as if mocking her terror. Sarah fought desperately, her screams turning into frantic cries for help, but the village was dead asleep, and no one heard her. The man threw her onto the wet ground, his grip tightening as he began to tear at her flesh. Sarah's screams filled the night, her voice breaking as the pain became unbearable. Blood splattered across the grass, mixing with the rain, turning the earth into a crimson pool. The man's face twisted in grotesque pleasure as he feasted, ripping her apart piece by piece. Sarah's cries grew weaker, her vision fading as she bled out onto the cold, unforgiving ground. Her last sight was of the man, his mouth smeared with her blood, as he smiled down at her with those empty, soulless eyes. As the life drained from her body, the man stood, his monstrous work complete. He turned and walked back into the storm, leaving Sarah's broken body behind. The door to the house slammed shut with a final, ominous thud. When the storm finally subsided and the villagers ventured out, they found Sarah's mutilated remains lying in the mud, her eyes frozen wide in eternal terror. The house, once a place of safety, now stood as a grim reminder of the horrors that waited in the dark. Scratched into the blood-soaked wood of the door were the words, "Never open the door." No one in the village ever dared to open their doors at night again. The memory of Sarah's screams and the sight of her bloodied corpse haunted their dreams, a constant reminder of the evil that lurks in the shadows, waiting for the next fool to make the same deadly mistake.